going to tell you guys what it is yet. We're going to go get it. So me and Irv are taking a 26-hour road trip to go pick up this ride. And we're going to show you all the shenanigans and fun stuff we get into on the way. Here we are crossing another state line into Missouri. We're at the 14-hour mark. Made it through the night, and at one point in the night we flipped along about 85 miles an hour and hit about a foot-tall drift in the middle of the highway. It's kind of interesting. Irv's back there asleep. Kind of tired myself, but we're making it. So we've made it to Louisiana, 24 and a half hours in. It's a long haul to pick up a pickup, but we're doing it anyway. We'll explain it later. Might just be the filthy windshield, or the focus is off a little. You're going to drive this 1,700 miles, huh?
Alright guys, so we knew we were doing this a while back. We've been planning this trip for a while. So we had a lot of parts shipped down here to my buddy's house before we ever left. So we got a fifth wheel. We'll be showing you. We're gonna do some work to this. We're supposed to have a add-on beadlock ring, and we'll be showing you how to install that. We got a set of 5 35, 12, 50, 15 Mickey Thompson MTZs. Actually found these on Amazon with a really good price and free shipping. So I decided to get 5 instead of just 4. We got some parts from Low Range Off-Road. We got some other stuff that we'll be showing you that we put into the diff that we're putting in this thing. We have our drive flange for the rear axle. We've got some bits and pieces for putting in this E-locker that we're going to show you. We got a guard for the E-locker motor. We got some parts from Trail Gear, some knuckle shims. We'll be showing you that. We have some parts that were already bought for this rig that weren't put on years ago, so we'll be installing those. We're putting an E-locker, a rear E-locker in this truck. So we got a wiring kit for it. From the factory, this E-locker uses like a computer and stuff to control it. But this 12voltguy.com has devised just a simple plug-and-play wiring harness for that rear diff. So I went ahead and bought. Comes with a switch panel, harnesses that just plug right into everything. The guy was super cool. He even threw in us an extra harness for if we ever want to put a front diff into this thing. But if you come in here, we show you the switch panel. This is going to replace the ashtray in the truck. So we got front and rear E-lockers. We got a winch control with in and out, all this, and it's all just already wired. Hook up a few wires and you're good to go. So all this means nothing if we can't get it to start. So we're going to start on that first.
All right, so after looking at it for a few minutes, we find out there's no starter in the truck. So checking to see if we can get it running, it's going to have to wait. It's also going to need some ball joint seals, maybe a new power steering rack. We're not sure. So we're going to start with the tires.
All right, for all you guys that don't understand what a beadlock is, basically this ring here is bolted on and sandwiches the bead of the wheel between 2 pieces of metal. It's basically just so you can air this tire down to next to nothing, 6 pounds, 4 pounds, and it won't fall off the wheel. It won't break the bead loose. I'll show you what it looks like once I get this beadlock off, and it'll make a little bit more sense. All right, beadlock wheel. This is the outer ring. Comes off, bolts on. Basically, you can see the bead here Just gets sandwiched between these two pieces and just locks it on. That's basically all it does. So simple enough. Now we're going to get started dismounting it and getting the new ones on.
Alright guys, so it's been a long, hectic day. There's been a few problems along the way, and we got 3 of our 5 tires mounted on the beadlock wheels. We got one wheel we still got to assemble before we can mount a tire to it. We started with the engine to see if we could get it running, and so far we put a starter in it and a fuel pump. We cleaned out the intake, we cleaned out the injectors, and we got the rear pumpkin out of the rear differential pumpkin out of the axle. And tomorrow we're going to start putting stuff back together.
All right, I'm going to give you a quick, just show you how to mount this ring, beadlock ring. It welds to the outside, so you want to clear off all your paint. Basically just true it up as well as you can, to all sides, and then we're going to take and tag it, alternating tacks until it's fully seated, and then we'll do our last welds. So let's do it. Big.
You did something.
You did something with it? It's right behind Alex. On the ground.
You still filming us?
Safety first. Alright, here we are. Day 2. Basically yesterday we did all the boring stuff. We didn't show you much of that because it was just stuff you should do with an older vehicle that's been sitting. We drained the fuel, we cleaned out all the injectors, cleaned out the fuel rail, flushed the line, those sort of things. Today we're going to get to the more fun stuff. We're going to throw in that E-diff we've been talking about. We're going to finish up mounting up the tires. If we get some time, maybe we'll get the some new knuckles on this thing. We also got to put the fuel tank back in with a new fuel pump, but we'll get started, and hopefully we can make it run today. Hey, we're at my buddy Tony's shop here, and of course he's going to make noise while I'm trying to talk. But we're getting the diff prepped. We're going to show you some of the little finer points of assembling a diff and setting up the backlash and things like that. So we'll get to work. Alright, before we got started on the technical stuff, we want to show you what we're putting into this diff. We got an E-diff out of a 99 Tacoma. It has a shift fork here that will engage this collar, and it just locks up the diff into, you can have an open diff or a lock diff like a spool. So we got that out of a junkyard. We also got a set of gears from Trail Gear. This is their super finish gears. You can see they're all polished up, and they claim, and we're going to test this out, no break-in necessary for these. And Irv's going to tell you about the solid spacer kit.
We also got a Trail Gear solid pinion bearing spacer to get rid of the crush sleeves so we don't have any problems with the bearings under heavy loads.
One of the tips we have for when you're going to set up a rear diff is make what we call a setup bearing. Normally these will press on, but we take and grind them out or machine them out so where they can just slip on and off, because you're going to be playing with shims to set the preload, or not set the preload, set the backlash and pinion depth. The other thing we have is always start with the original shims. This is the one that came off the old ring and pinion, so we're going to start with that one and see how close it gets us. We're just setting our preliminary backlash. On this diff in particular, you want it to be between 6 and 10 thousandths. And the cool thing about this Toyota diff, it has these adjusting nuts on either side. So to set your backlash, you can just loosen up one, tighten up the other, and kind of move it back and forth. Other diffs, you're going to have to make like setup bearings like we did with the pinion, and put them on either side of the carrier and play with shims to get your backlash right. So we got our backlash set where we want it, right about 8, right in the middle of the range. Now we're going to put paint. We have a marking paint that we're going to put on the teeth. run the pattern, see if our pinion depth that we set a while ago is right or not, whether we have to change that. So
Roundy, roundy. It's on the edge, but it's roundy. Oh, sorry.
He's gonna blank all this audio anyway.
I'm going to put this over me talking about us checking the pattern.
See the nice round pattern, that's what we want. That actually looks a lot better than it ever did.
Mm-hmm.
We finally got everything set up, and now we're going to press our actual bearing on with our shim pack that we finally figured out to get the pinion right. So, alright, we're setting up our preload on our pinion. So we're setting our preload on our pinion bearings, and since we're using that solid spacer, basically we have our solid spacer, and then we adjust our preload with shims. And if you were using the crush sleeve, like in a that come from the factory, you would just basically tighten up the nut until your preload is what you want.
Much easier to set up.
Yes, much easier. But anyways, so old school guys like to just do it by feel, but there is a proper procedure. You can use an inch-pound torque wrench and just see the resistance as you rotate it. We got this one within spec, so we're going to throw our new bearing and pinion seal in and start setting our diff in for the final time. Beep.
All right. Thanks. So we got our pinion and ring installed in our locker. The pinion was a little bit more of a chore because we used the trail gear solid shim between the pinion bearings. It came with a bunch of these little shims, and finding the right combination did take a few tries. But now that it's all together, we got our pattern looking really good on the gears, and we'll be ready to install it, and that'll come shortly.
Okay, so yesterday we pulled out the old third member, and it was a spool type like this. Basically, it ties the two axle shafts together all the time. Great for racing or just off-road. Not so friendly on the street, especially not so friendly in the ice and snow that we have up in Montana. So we wanted to put a selectable locker that we could unlock, go from open to locked. So we're going to show you the modifications that you have to make to the housing to put in the newer electric locker from Toyota. First things first, we had to pull out these three studs here. And just a quick tip real quick, if you ever have to pull out studs, take two nuts, jam them tight together, tighten them against each other. Then you can just take and turn them right out, and they'll come right out. Basically, you're just locking the two nuts together, and then they become one with the stud, something like that. So, the guys that have done this and other forums that I've read and the company that I got these from, they don't recommend using this gasket for a gasket because the modifications you have to do to the housing, you may not get it perfect. So you just use the gasket as a template of sorts. Slide it over all your studs, and then you can see where you have to trim. So basically, we have to cut out this section of the housing, put a stud here and a stud here, and looks like a stud here. That one lines up. So we just have to drill 4 holes for 4 studs. There's 4. There's 2 of these long studs that'll go in this position, because you'll see it once we put in the diff. What that means, and then you just basically we have the regular short studs that'll go in the bottom here, just like that's already there. So we got our dime grinder here. I'm going to mark this out. We're going to cut her, and then we'll test fit our diff, and then that should be it.
Thank you, Siri.
Alright, so we got our housing all modified to fit the E-locker. Basically all we did is we cut out this notch here. We had to drill 4 holes and tap. These 2 long ones and these 2 new ones here were all relocated because of the E-locker. The shift fork is over on this side, so it's a little bit, the bolt pattern's a little different. One thing I noticed when I was cleaning this out, these little guys sit in the housing something like that, and there was loads of shavings in behind them. So you want to make sure that you either pull them out or really flush this housing with something. We were using brake clean. to get all the shavings out. You don't want that in your new axle. One thing I'll note here is we had to add a little bit of weld to the outside of this flange to get this last one in. You can drill this one without doing that, but I figured it'd be a lot easier to get this surface out a little further and just grind it out flat so we could get our stud in. We got all these parts, the studs, our gasket that we used as a template, all from Low Range Off-Road. They've got everything you need to put this diff in your older Toyota 8-inch. Alright, day 3, and we've got nothing done so far. We haven't even run this thing yet. This is turning out to be like an episode of Roadkill or something. So, here's our to-do list. I'll give you a second or two to read that. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, we wrote this yesterday and marked nothing off. So we showed you how to install the diff. It turns out, don't use the gasket as a template. It's completely wrong. So we had to weld up the holes, and now we drilled them. Trying to re-drill them through weld is next to impossible. So I think we broke off 4 bits, doled out 4 other bits, and so we're going to try to get that done here this morning. And then once that's done, we can start putting fuel tank back in and fuel pump, and the rest of this stuff should go pretty quickly. So let's get to work and see what we can get done. All right, so we finally got our electric locker in. We told you about the mess up with the studs and such. One pointer when you're going to go do this: take out those studs we talked about in the beginning, and then set your new diff up there. And then you can usually take we took a drill bit that was the exact size of the hole, and just took it down in there and spun it a little bit and left a perfect centered mark where we needed it. If you can't do that, if you don't have a long enough drill bit, we also took spray paint and just spray it in the hole, and it'll make a nice round hole on your flange, and then you just center off of that. So we got all that on. We got our triple drilled pinion flange from Low Range Off-Road. This has all 3 patterns that Toyota ever used. So any Toyota drive shaft will bolt to this. We got our Low Range electric motor skid here. This thing's really simple. It's got you take a bolt out here, and you use the 2 long studs that we showed you earlier, and she just bolts right on. We had to do a little bit of clearancing right here on the metal just to get past the diff, but nothing major. Other than that, we're going to get her plugged in with our 12-volt guy harness and throw our axle shafts in, and this guy will be done.
Get it out. Sweet. Dinner is served.
You have to use this part in your video. Probably going to be the only part I'm in.
Video?
So we got our e-locker controller and winch control switch panel from 12voltguy.com. It mounts where the stock ashtray would go. It just slips in from the front. A couple of screws hold it at the top. There is a slight mod though. There's a screw that holds the panel in place, a tab, and you have to cut that off to fit the switches.
We got everything put back together, new fuel pump, everything's clean. We're going to see if she runs.
Ooh, I hear the pump.
It's making weird noises.
Where they go?
Attempt number 2.
Alright, so after a little banging on things under the hood and whatnot, we're going to give her one more shot.
Like a top. Alright, it's been another long day. We actually got things done today though. We got to mark off installing the diff, the case, we got the fuel tank in, the fuel pump, flush the lines. Well, as you saw, we got to fire her up. She runs good. So we drained the oil. We got to finish changing the oil. we're gonna flush the radiator and the engine out one last time because we're installing some altimeter gauges, oil pressure, water temp, volt, just some things to keep an eye on it. Tomorrow we'll have a set of shocks to throw on, a steering stabilizer, and hopefully we'll get to drive it. So we're going to go get some rest for a few hours, and then we're going to be back at this tomorrow, and hopefully, the plan was to leave tomorrow and go rock crawling, but looks like we're going to have to put that off a day, and hopefully we still get to get some wheeling in. So we're going to get some rest, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.